Hello, my name is Janice B. Gordon, and this is Scale Your Sales Podcast. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast. I am Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert recommended by LinkedIn Sales as one of 15 innovating influencers to follow. In today's episode of Scale Your Sales Podcast, my guest talks extensively about their program and how she has become aware of the generational differences in women in sales, the opportunities and the challenges for each. So we had an extensive conversation of the impact of several generations being in sales, and also how their program, the IES Women in Sales Leadership Program, helps to mentor many of the new people coming into the sales industry. And one of the challenges is to them about expressing and communicating their value. So the thing is that many younger women are open to express their views, but actually the industry doesn't always accept and absorb the way that people communicate. And it's a generational difference in communication. So it's really quite interesting, the impact on sales, the impact on industry, and the impact of people working remotely. All of that we covered in the conversation. It was brilliant. So you're going to love this. My next guest is co-founder and director of the Women in Sales Leadership Center at the Institute of Excellence in Sales, IES. So welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, Gina Stracuzzi.
Thank you, Janice. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I know we've had you on before, but we always have such a great conversation that I really wanted to get you on again. And particularly starting off, I'd love to talk to you about generational differences in women in sales, because we've talked about women in sales, but what are the generational differences and opportunities and challenges from your perspective?
Well, wonderful. Yeah, it's a question that's kind of front and center on a couple of levels. We have the Executive Women in Sales Forum, which we have women from all over the world that join us. And it's really a program meant for women who are on the leadership track already. You know, they're senior directors, and the titles really don't mean anything because they're so different within every company. It's just they people manage, they've been on that track for a while, and it's really to make sure they don't get stuck, because that happens to women in middle management a lot. You know, we leave the workforce perhaps for maternity leave, or even just raising kids. Sometimes you have to go back and forth, or aging parents, or whatever the case is. And so easy for women to get stuck in that middle ground. Recently, though, we have started an emerging leaders forum. And this is for brand new managers and those who are just about to be taking on their first management role. And Janice, it is so interesting to listen to the differences in what the women perceive as challenges and opportunities and all of it. And it's becoming very clear that the new generations coming into management, into leadership, they feel much more empowered than, let's say, we did. And they don't, there are still boorish people everywhere, and there always will be. It's what keeps the world exciting. But they don't feel that same level of not being seen, not being heard. And what I talk to them about, and what the speakers talk to them about a lot, is to make sure that they continue using their voices, but in a way that is really constructive careers, not just, and this is something we hear from the executives, like, that guy hurt my feelings, I'm going to HR. It's So use your voice in a really constructive way that helps your career, because what we see still at the executive level is women who got in the habit young in their careers of not speaking up. And once it's a habit, it's really hard to break. You know what I mean? You don't get that strength, that initiative to immediately, all of a sudden say, I'm going to use my voice now. I'm 40 and now I'm ready. So it's interesting to see the dichotomy where younger generations are speaking up, but what's we're seeing is that it's not always the most productive way of speaking up. So it's very interesting because they really do feel empowered to take on their own destiny in ways that we didn't. And it is quite interesting, especially when they work together, because the young women feel like they can say anything, and sometimes the older women are like, okay, that's great that you feel empowered, but maybe don't say everything. So,
don't give away your secrets.
That's right. That's right. And don't,
I think it's a really interesting point, Gina, because, generationally, you think being natives of the new technology, and so growing up with social media where you talk about everything's exposed, people are anonymously giving out their opinion. So, the training is to expect to be heard, that you have a voice.
Right.
And so I think it's interesting what you're saying about how that plays out in the sales environment for women in sales, where you always have these two kind of polar opposites, where the way that, people like you and I were brought up is to be like children, really. You can be seen but not heard. You don't have an opinion. You don't have power, and we saw that very much in our mothers, but we're expected to continue that. And I think it's quite challenging. I spoke to another sales leader, and he was saying that in his company he has under him 4 generations, and 4 very different generations, where you have to, the way that you disseminate information, the language you use when you're talking about the same thing, but the way that people interpret it differently. So and it's never happened before that you had that many generations within the workforce, all vying for the same thing. So, it's really challenging for leaders of organizations to how you appreciate that. There's some people who will be politically correct, and others that won't be, and feel it's okay. It is a real challenge, isn't it?
It is. And, everybody wants the women that I work with, the older women, they really want these women to succeed. And it is, to your point, a really challenging communication situation, because there is this assumption, almost to a fault, that you will get what you need and get what you want. You just need to make it known. And I'm a big proponent of women making their career goals and aspirations known to their leaders, because people can't give you what they don't know you want, right? But there is this other side of it, and it has really become quite the topic of discussion. And we had a conference about 3 weeks ago, and Mary Shea spoke, and she actually quoted you in one of her slides. We were talking about hybrid work and what's won and lost. And it's really interesting for sales leaders who are trying to build strong sales teams, right? And they have this whole new wave of young people coming in who want to work remotely. But as you and I know, I mean, selling is a team sport. You really need that energy, that juice that you get out of being part of it. Plus, as I said at the conference, if I was left to my own devices and when I started selling, if I was selling from my dining room table, I would not be standing here because I would not have stayed in sales. I stayed in sales because there was an excitement that happened by being part of a collective misery sometimes, and then you get so excited, like, oh my God, I got someone on the phone. It's like just those little things and listening to people sell and how they do it. And all of those things really go, as far as I'm concerned, making a really strong, resilient salesperson who can take those ups and downs and really grow from them. I want to say that going back to your point a few minutes ago about the 4 generations in the workforce right now, a woman who is involved with the forum, and she's been facilitating a session for the executive forum for 5 years. Her name is Kiara Fenderson from the Ambition Studio, and she is now coaching companies on how to speak to these 4 generations. And it's like an all hands thing, and everybody works on it together, and it's really quite interesting the very different ways that we communicate and what is being picked up and what is being left by the wayside. So I think those generational differences are going to play out in a big way over the next 4 to 5 years, especially when you add in this I don't really want to be in an office kind of sentiment. So it's I as a speaker and a facilitator and a collaborator, I'm trying to keep people talking about these companies, talking about these challenges, because this idea that we're just going to throw things at the wall and see what sticks in terms of these new hybrid approaches is really quite fascinating. And at the conference, when Mary was talking, we really got into some interesting things that companies are doing and people are doing to try to stay part of the team and really get the juice from each other, get that collaborative energy where innovations and creativity happens. And so this whole generational piece is going to be such a significant part of where we go and how we all make it work. I mean, do you see the same thing over there? I mean, are people back in the office?
Do you know, because here I am in my garden office at home, happy as Larry. And when I get a call to go and work with a company, it's like, do you really need me to leave my comfortable office? Do you need me in person? And so even I have that. I think it depends on what comfort zone is, and I've created a whole studio around me so I can do as good, from my studio office as in person without all of that travel. And so I have reevaluated what I do, and many organizations I work with also reevaluate what they do. And I think it's like the pendulum; it swings, doesn't it? And so it swings one way where we're all, remote and virtual. Companies, they've got, huge overheads in offices. They're trying to swing it all back again, but actually, it will never fit to what it was. And that isn't the most active model. So we're kind of trying to negotiate the bit in the middle. But I think one thing that's missing, we've got a lot of the technologies. I mean, look how far Zoom and the like have come on. But we haven't yet got all of the collaborative technologies in place that it actually as if you're face to face. there's always going to be a compromises, but there's always going to be some elements where it's actually it's more cost effective, it's better on time management or whatever it may be, or the learning that you get online can be, depending on whose facility, can act more effective in terms of the memory curve, what you can do with it. But the technology is still kind of catching up with where we need to be, where it's seamless. So I think it's just a pendulum. We've swung one way, we're going to swing back again until we find our happy normal, whatever normal might be. And I think in terms of what you were saying about the 4 generations, I actually think those 4 generations are going to start to come together, that it won't be 4 separate silos of people that want something different. It will be a blending, as one generation at the extreme towards, because they have to, because of the technology and what the economy and the environment likes, and your customers and all of that, to fit whatever this norm box is. And the new generations coming up into the workplace, we always have to learn and adapt. What does it mean to be in a working environment?
Right.
What is the language that we have to use to be in a work? What is the business speak? What is the jargon and they have to learn that as well, what is and isn't acceptable. But along with the long-term generation has to learn with how to be more creative and innovative and fluid, to really embrace so I think there will be a coming together.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's, yeah, I really think I agree with that completely. I do personally believe that there is something lost by not being in a room with somebody and not having that proximity to just the energy that we get from other human beings. So I am a fan of companies and employees working together to come up with 2 to 3 days, however it looks, where everybody gets the same access to leadership and the same opportunity, and it's not scattershot, come in any 2 days you want, that doesn't work, because then we're just in front of a screen anyway.
Yeah. But I do think, Gina, that there is a leveling that this new environment has given us, in that you would have, you come from a sales environment, you got the, it's still the boys club, and on the golf course, lots of deals are done, all of that, right? So if you were a woman, then a lot of that was not accessible to you. As you said earlier, you might have additional responsibilities, whether it's older or younger. So certain out all night drinking, all of this wasn't available to you. Now, if everyone's living in these little boxes in the gallery, I'm not saying that that's the best way, but if a lot of people have to conduct their relationships with their leaders, internal and external relationships, then there's less of that kind of favoritism and behind closed doors conversations, and especially talking about the younger generation. They like transparency. They do not like all of this cloak and daggers behind closed doors.
Definitely.
So I do think there's real bits in, as we learn to navigate this new world, there's probably going to be many more benefits, and a leveling out of the roles that men and women play, whether it's business, personal, in the home, looking after family, all of that. So I do think there's a real positive aspect to this that's going to be a real leveler.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
For my, my soapbox, it's just making sure that what doesn't happen is that more men go into the office and therefore get visibility, because women are now, they've worked all the childcare, everything in I don't know what it's like in England, but childcare here right now is abysmal.
Yeah.
And so a lot of women have worked, they've got this, rhythm going, which is awesome. But it also takes away potential opportunities. And one thing I am a little concerned, well, two things. I am concerned that some women, certainly not all, but some women will lose that sense of identity, that being outside the house and showing up someplace with a completely different mindset. And, so that part I wonder about. But what I do like, that go to your point, is now companies and employees are working together more, because it cannot be this adversarial. First the employers had all the power, and then it seemed like the employees had all the power, and now it's like, why do you want me back there? What are your intentions? All of that kind of stuff, and that doesn't serve anybody. At the end of the day, it doesn't serve anybody. But the other concern I have, to your point about younger generations, if they never go into an office, they don't learn the protocols and the graciousness that it takes to work with difficult people. And for me, it was a major growth thing, working in offices and coming face to face with someone who's just like in my face, or whatever the case is. You learn so much about how to be an adult, really. And so I just, I wonder about all these things. It's not like I think one is always all bad. It is taking the good parts of both and figuring out how that's going to work and how it's going to serve every generation of women. And that's really my end goal, as I know it is yours. Just let's make sure we're doing things in an intentional way that keeps moving the needle forward for opportunities for women. And that's really the end goal, that we don't get lost somewhere in this stuff that's happening now, and we find a way to stay powerful and get even more of what we need in this new reality. And that's where I think the generational differences are quite profound. And I think we can learn a lot from, the younger generation. And if they're open to it, they can learn a lot from us.
I love the points that you're making. I think it's really important. I think that would be a great research project, or just a measure for HR as to what percent of men are in the office, and what's the implication of that against the percentage of women. And if there is a step up because of that, then how they, if you're not measuring it, you don't know.
Well, that's it.
But that did make me think, that's, in really, this is why I love talking to you, Gina.
I think those deep thoughts.
We've earned it, haven't we? We
have. We're sages now.
Okay, I'm going to switch it up a bit, because I love to kind of like see what your opinion is on various things. And one I often ask people in terms of practical strategies, because we want to make it really grounding and relevant. And one of the core things that you talked about, customer century, and I talk about that quite a lot as well, is just to make it, what is if there was only one thing you could advise people to do to ensure that we continue to modernize sales and we continue to enable buyers to buy, what would that be?
I would say, one, don't be afraid of AI. Embrace it and let it work for you. And then, I think Mary pointed out, there's so many speakers at the conference, but I'm pretty sure it was Mary, because she was doing all the stats that buyers
Mary is the oracle.
Oh, I know. I
love
having her. And she's such a storyteller along with it. She's not just dry, here are the numbers. So she was talking about like 70%, 75, I don't know, something like that, percent of buyers come to the table, armed. I mean, they know what they want. They know what is out there, right? And so you only have that small opportunity to really get their attention and make it memorable for them. And so that's not always going to be about price. But if you are a seller who hasn't embraced the latest technology, and if you're not utilizing AI, and how it is impacting your industry, you can be pretty sure your buyer is. So if you're not up to speed, if you're, no, I don't want to touch that, I'm afraid of that. I think that is going to really limit your impact with the buyer, because you've got to be able to respond in a way that is going to resonate with them. And if they've done their homework, which is what the research is telling us, that they know what they want and they know what's available. So you need to be able to respond in a way that shows that you know what's happening in the marketplace and you know what their options are and you can address them. Like, I know you have the ability to buy from this person or this company, and they offer this, this, and this. And be ready. And then be able to say, here's what we can do differently.
Yeah, I love that. What I love is that, you said embrace AI. And the thing is, if you guess your generational people that are after your role are, and along with your buyers are. So you've got to be in the game that your customers are. If you're not in the game, then you're out of it. So there's a threat on all sides, really, isn't there? If you remain relevant. So I do love that, having to embrace new technologies, new way of thinking, and to remain relevant, not only for your buyers, but if you want to stay in your role as well.
I want to tell you a quick story, and I remind myself of this anytime I read too much of, oh my God, the sky is falling because of some new technology. And I learned this in my graduate program at NYU. Every single media and technology that has come into our lives, starting with writing, going from oral to writing stories, has been categorized as the end of the world as we know it. Writing, taking the power away from the orators. Well, oh my God, how can that be? We need our storytellers. And then the printing press. Well, how do we know that they'll get it right? It's, every single thing that has come on to mankind has been poo-pooed, and it's of change. And so we can either adapt or we can get left by the wayside. And yes, there will be winners and losers, but that's where innovation happens. If for some reason you feel like it, I read something that said AI won't put a good person out of work. It'll put the people who are only kind of moving along. So if you're in sales and your numbers aren't great and you're just kind of coasting, yeah, you could be in jeopardy. Yeah. Because there are things that this technology can do quite rapidly. And there is that, but that happens with every technology. Things get more efficient.
Exactly. And it changes the role. It may be that, remember there's all of those scare tactics, in the sales industry, most people are losing their jobs. 10 years ago, there was all of that in the press, like the percentage of people that won't be in work and all of that. Well, it hasn't happened as yet, but there will be some roles that go. And thankfully, there will be some very mundane roles that we want them to go. But there will be new roles. That's what we're not considering. There'll be new opportunities, that will come along. We don't all know what that is, but it's if we're embracing it, many young people are taking classes now in things that they think will be relevant in the future. You
Right.
know, so that's the kind of attitude you've got to have. It's all about a mindset. It's being ready for whatever comes rather than fearful and putting the barriers up as to whatever comes.
Yes. Yes,
And
definitely.
with that, there's a person that I know very much has that kind of mindset. So who is your Shiro and why?
Well, you know, I thought about this a lot when I was filling that out because there are so many people, so many that I admire tremendously. But I really, while she probably gets mentioned a lot, I picked Brene Brown because I really love that she brought shame out of the closet. And shame has been used against women in so many ways, right? Over the years. We have been shamed into silence for things that we shouldn't even be ashamed of. And it was a tactic that companies use, not even just on women, but just on men too. Um, and I think it's a collective awareness she did with her books and her research, a collective awareness of what we're doing. Because sometimes I think we do things just because that's the way they've been done, and we don't stop and think about the damage we're doing. So I love that she got us talking about shame, because who wanted to talk about that before, right?
Yeah.
No one wanted to say, I'm ashamed, or that made me feel shame. You
Yeah.
know, nobody was having those conversations before that.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Brilliant. All right. So how can listeners get hold of you, Gina?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and it's Gina Stracuzzi, like jacuzzi, but STRA. And you can find out me on the website, which is the Institute for Excellence in Sales, and it's www.i4esbd.com. That was business development, but we dropped that. So yeah, I'm around.
Well, I'm glad you are around. Gina Stracuzzi, it's been absolutely a pleasure speaking to you. I know we always have a great conversation.
We
And
do
this is
indeed.
no less. Thank you so much for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast.
Thank you for having me, Janice. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast. If you like this discussion, feel free to listen to other episodes or watch the captioned show on YouTube and subscribe to future episodes. I would really appreciate it if you would leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you.